Today, our guest speaker is Gov Hutchinson. He's no stranger to CDAR. He is a vice president and general counsel with the California Association of Realtors. He's been with C.A.R. since 1985. That's 35 years. And
Amazing.
he oversees a legal hotline. So Gov is going to talk about the new and recently updated COVID-19 forms released by C.A.R. And take it away, Gov. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Good to be here. I wish I was with you in person, but I'm not. You know what the problem is? I live in a townhouse. I don't even have a backyard, so I'm totally in prison right now, but that's okay. I want to tell you about what you need to know legally in the COVID-19 era. This is not going to last forever. I think California is actually going to start opening up sooner rather than later, but it's probably not going to be completely open for a few months. So we may have to follow these rules in real estate. I wouldn't be surprised for a few more months. So what I'm going to tell you about, not just the forms, but I'm going to tell you about the changes in the law affecting real estate that we have to deal with right now for the time being, okay? And the most important thing are these forms. And the reason these forms are important is because if you use the forms, then you're following the law and you're not going to get in trouble. I mean, the basic idea, remember, is the good news is realtors are considered to be essential workers in California. You can go out and do your job, but you cannot do your job the way you used to do your job for the time being. As you know, there's no open houses, there's no broker caravans. There's all sorts of things that you have to do now. You can't show the property to more than 2 buyers at a time. Everybody's got to wear gloves and a mask. In other words, there are these best practices that we all have to follow. And these are not just suggestions. These are the law in California right now. We have to do it. But the good news is we got a couple of forms. And if everyone promises to use these forms, then we're all good. No one's going to get in trouble. No one's going to get sick. You're not going to get sued. If you do get sued, your E&O will cover you. If you don't follow the rules and you don't use the right forms and someone violates the rules, then your E&O won't cover you and your clients don't have to indemnify you and you can get involved in lawsuits. So let me talk about these forms real quick. The first form I want to talk about is a form called the RLA-CAA. Now, thank you very much, Annette, for putting it up there. I strongly recommend to you now, every single time you take a listing, you make the seller sign this addendum. You know why it's called addendum or amendment? Because if you haven't taken the listing yet, you make it part of the listing, and that's called an addendum. If you already have a listing, you're already in a listing, then you can add this to your transaction, and now that's called an amendment. Addendum is when you attach it at the beginning. Amendment is when you attach it once you're already in there. Either way, you really want your seller to sign this. And what the seller is doing when signing this, they're acknowledging that there are these stay-home rules out there, and they're promising that they're going to follow these rules. You're promising and they're promising. Everybody's promising we're always going to follow these rules. And it says later on in the form, if they don't follow the rules, they are going against your advice, and they also are going to indemnify you. If they don't follow the rules and they get sued and someone sues you too, they will defend your suit. You don't even have to turn it over to E&O, and the E&O will cover you. So it's very important. Paragraph 1, this is when the seller is saying whether they agree to showings. Showings are perfectly legal in California, so chances are they are going to agree to that. But they're also agreeing that you gave them this other form, which I'm going to talk about in a second, the PEAD, and everyone agrees you're going to follow the protocols of this statement. Look what you have an option to do. If you want to, you don't have to. You can check a box and say, you're only going to allow showings of people that are pre-qualified. You don't have to do that, but if you want to, you can check that. And look at 1C. If you want to, you can limit showings in person to people who've already visited the property online. Those are optional. You don't have to do it, but it's in there if you want it. Paragraph 2, your sellers are going to decide which marketing activities are okay. Are they going to paint? They want signs? They want staging? They want virtual tours? Agent's visual inspection. And you're going to say, well, don't they have to have an agent visual inspection? Well, some sellers we've come across, even though they're allowed to have in-person showings, they don't want people in their property. They say, I don't care if they wear a mask. I don't care what they do. I don't want them in my property during this. I just want to do everything virtually. And they don't even want you to do a visual inspection. Well, is it legal to not do a visual inspection if your client doesn't want you to? Well, yeah, if your client doesn't allow you to do it, you don't do it. What you would do then is on the AVID form, you would basically say on the AVID form, I was not allowed to have access to the property, so I'm disclosing what I know. I'm disclosing what the seller told me. I'm disclosing what I can see on the virtual tour that the seller created, but I wasn't in there myself. Then under paragraph 3, necessary activities, this is when your client is basically giving you permission to do walk-through, physical inspection, appraisal, and all that stuff. What if the seller says, I don't want all this stuff? Well, then it says later on in the contract, well, if you don't allow this stuff, it's going to be real hard to sell your house, or at least get the value that it's worth, and seller understands that, okay? So it's a good form. It's a helpful form. I recommend the form. You see, there's the part about the seller, if the seller prohibits access. And then number 7 is the real important part where the seller understands you're going to do the best you can, but it's not your job to verify that everybody else is following the rules, right? I mean, you're not the police. Your job is to just tell people what the rules are. Hopefully they follow them, but you're not the police if something goes wrong. And the seller, as I said at the very end of that paragraph 7, they assume the risk of allowing people to enter the property, and they release you from any loss. They can't sue you, and they have to defend you if somebody else sues you. So that's good. The second form I want to talk about is even more important than this form. It's called the PEAD. This is the form which everybody is going to sign. Seller and the listing agent, you're going to sign one of these forms, just one per listing. And then anyone who enters the property, you're going to make them give you a form and sign this form. Okay? Now, if you look at number 5, the seller is saying, by signing this form, I acknowledge I'm allowing people to enter the property, and I also promise to clean and disinfect after every showing. That's part of the rules now. Seller has to clean after every showing. That doesn't mean a whole house cleaning. It means you're going to wipe down any surfaces that were touched. And hopefully, if the buyer and the buyer's agents are wearing gloves and they're not supposed to touch anything anyway, there's not going to be much to wipe down, right? Okay. Number 6 is real important. Any buyer or buyer's agent or inspector or appraiser, anyone who's entering the property, you see what they're agreeing to here? They're going to follow the rules. They're going to protect themselves. They're going to wear gloves, wash their hands, wear a mask, wear shoe coverings if they're available. And they're going to keep 6 feet apart, et cetera, et cetera. So that's good. And then number 7 is real important. Everyone is saying, whether you're the seller, the listing agent, the buyer's agent, the buyer, the inspector, you're all saying, as far as I know, I'm not sick. I don't have any symptoms. And as far as I know, I have not been in contact with anyone who is sick within the last 14 days. Now, let's say I'm a buyer and I'm looking at 3 houses today. I just have to fill out one of these forms, and I can make copies and give a copy to each listing agent. But let's say I want to go back into the property tomorrow. I need to sign a new one of these with a new date. Okay? So it's only good for a day. You can use it on multiple properties that you're entering, but tomorrow you need a new form because things can change. Maybe you got sick since yesterday. Maybe you had contact with someone who was sick or something like that. Something changed, right? Something might have changed. So these forms are good for one day. The seller doesn't have to sign it for every showing. The seller just sort of signs one. The only time a seller would do a new one would be if the seller had a health situation change, right? Now you see it at the very bottom, you sign, it now identifies who's signing. And then of course, you're gonna give a copy. Everyone should get a copy too. You're gonna give a copy to the seller. If you're on the buyer side, you give a copy to the seller, copy to the seller's agent. And if you're the buyer, of course, the buyer's agent, you probably want a copy from your own buyer, right? So you see there's different places to initial. Agent can initial for the broker. You don't need the broker's initial. But anyway, it's a good form. It will protect you, protect your health, and it also protects your legal liability. I strongly advise it. Now, what if it's not a for sale, it's a for lease property. You have a property available for lease. Same rules apply. The same rules on showings apply, but we have a slightly different form. It's called the PEADLR for lease rental. I mean, it's basically the same form, the PEADLR. You see, but just the terminology talks about tenants and property managers and people, but it's the same rules, okay? People ask me, does this all apply to commercial? Well, no, the same rules don't apply to commercial, except, there's a rule in LA County right now that you're not supposed to be in gatherings and you're supposed to wear a mask when you're outside anyway. So even on commercial, yeah, it's not that you necessarily have to sign these forms, but you should all probably still be wearing masks and gloves and doing the right thing, okay? Before I go on, I'm gonna look at the questions real quick. The Gracie Nilsson, the RLACA is in the forms. I think it was there. I think you saw it. Robert Gallagher, I answered your questions. One signature for the seller. There's a place for the address. I know what you're thinking, Tish. If you can use the same form for different addresses, where do I put the different address? I don't think it's crucial that you have the address. The crucial thing is you have a form signed and dated today, and you give it to the listing agent. So I think it's not as crucial about the actual address. You're right, Charlie White, the PADLR applies to tenant-occupied properties. Even if it's for sale, is what you're saying. To tell you the truth, if it's a tenant-occupied property for sale or a tenant-occupied property for lease, it really doesn't matter which one you use. But if it's a tenant-occupied property for sale, the people that entering are really going to be buyers, right? So the terminology on the regular PEAD form, and so I would probably use the regular PEAD form. George has a good question. Buyer's agent should ask listing agents if they've received any previous showings where the agent has declared an exception. That's a very good point, and it does say that. In other words, let's say someone entered the property, you let someone into the property yesterday or the day before, and that person wrote on their PEAD that I'm sick, or I've been in contact with someone that's sick. Yes, you need to notify people that are coming in after that. Oh, by the way, someone came into the property yesterday who was sick or in contact with someone that's sick. You need to tell them that before they come into the property, right? That's an obligation. That's also in the best practices, and that's also on the form. Okay, let me move on. Let's say now we're in the contract, right? Now we're in escrow. I want you to look at a form called the CVA, the Coronavirus Addendum. In this world we live in now, sometimes things aren't happening on time. Sometimes there's a delay with the lender, there's a delay with the appraiser, there's a delay with the notary, there's a delay with the inspector. Sometimes something happens where the buyer has to take care of a sick relative in the middle of escrow. Or maybe the buyer loses their job or something like that happens. Or maybe something happens to the seller. And if something happens, there's going to be a delay. There may be a delay in the time it takes to remove your contingency, or you may need a delay to the actual closing date. So if the buyer and seller sign this form at the beginning of the escrow along with the purchase contract, they can agree. They can check off 4A, and everyone agrees that if there's an unforeseen coronavirus circumstance, then we all agree that the buyer has an extra 30 days to remove certain contingencies. Or let's say something happens in escrow to the buyer or seller, which is going to cause a delay in closing. So if you check the box in 4B, everyone agrees that if there's a coronavirus circumstance that causes a delay, we all agree upfront to an automatic 30-day extension. And you can change that 30 to a different number if you want, okay? Well, let's go back to A. What if the buyer, you agree to this form, something happens, so they get the 30-day extension on removing their contingencies, and 30 days later, they still have a problem with the lender or the inspector, so they're still unable to remove their contingencies. Now what happens? Well, it says right there, after the extension, if you still can't do it, and of course, assuming the reason is related to COVID-19, either party can cancel the agreement and the buyer gets their money back. Well, some sellers are going to say, well, then I don't like that part, because if the buyer, and I want to get their money. I don't think most sellers are going to say that. But if they say may not want to sign the form. The next one, 4B, that's important. What if everybody agrees that if something happens in escrow related to COVID-19, there's an automatic extension of close of escrow? In other words, maybe the buyer's already removed their contingencies, but then something happens that causes a delay. Let's say I'm the buyer, you're the seller, I've removed my contingencies, but now I find out the lender's backed up, taking too long, whatever. So since we've already agreed to this form and checked the box in 4B, we've agreed that if something happens, there's an automatic 30-day extension to close. Okay, great. Then 30 days go by and I still can't close. Now what? Well, it says in 4B, either buyer or seller can now cancel the deal. But when this happens, does the buyer lose their deposit or does the seller keep it? Well, if you look on 4B, it depends on what box you check. I know what you're thinking. Buyers are only going to want to check the box that says they get their money. If you don't check the box, the buyer gets their money. It defaults to that. If you check the box, then seller gets the money. Seller says, yeah, I want to check the box. Buyer says, I don't want to check the box. You may have an impasse, which means the buyer and seller might not be able to sign this form. You know what I'm saying? That's a possibility. This form is not mandatory. This form is helpful because it anticipates potential problems, and then it decides what is going to happen rather than leave it open. Well, let me ask you another question, or point out something. What if you don't sign this form and the buyer's in escrow and they've removed their contingencies and all of a sudden they get laid off from their job because of COVID-19? And now they just want to cancel because they can't close. Do they get their money back or not if you haven't signed this form? Well, now it's going to be up to a judge. And some judges are going to say, well, you're right. This was out of your control. Nothing to do with you. Nothing you could have done about it. It's like this superhuman cause. So under California law, I'm going to give you back your deposit. Another judge might say, well, yeah, I don't think it's that significant. I don't think it's like a normal act of God type of thing, so I'm not going to let you get your money back. The point is, you don't know. I think most judges are going to give them their money back anyway, but the good thing about using this form is you don't have to worry about, right? You won't have to worry about what a judge is going to decide. You can deal with it up front. One other form I want to look at before I get your questions related to this. Let's say I'm the buyer, you're the seller. We've agreed to this form, but we've agreed that if something happens, there's a delay. Well, what's the form to use to tell you that something happened? Well, that's the next form I want to talk about, the NUCC. This is the form that either the buyer or the seller sends to the other person and says, yeah, look at A, lost income, so I can't qualify. There's a delay with the notary, a delay with the lender, a delay with the appraiser, or maybe under B, there's a difficulty scheduling a home inspection or a pest control inspection or a walkthrough, or maybe under C, I'm sick, I'm I'm under quarantine, whatever. The point is, this is the form where the buyer or the seller tells the other person what happened, and now this triggers the automatic extension if we've already agreed to that CVA form. And by the way, we have a CVA form for a lease situation as well. We have an NUCC form for a lease situation as well. Let me go to a couple questions. Can you preview a home without the client, without having, can you preview a home without the client having signed the form? Bottom line is, the rules are no one should be entering somebody else's house without signing the form. Whether you preview it, whatever you want to call it, the forms need to be signed on both sides before there is any entrance into the property, okay? I think Gina had a question. Wouldn't it make more sense to present this form if and when there's a problem? The problem with that is, if you don't get it signed up front and you present it when there's a problem, the other side may say, well, I'm not signing it. Whereas maybe it's easier to get them to sign it up front as part of the original contract, okay? Charlie White, what if you get CVA, they don't check any of the boxes? Good point. That's an interesting situation there. I guess if you don't check any of the boxes, then the form really has no meaning. You know what I mean? It doesn't really do anything. It's sort of an advisory form. Todd Banks asking a question. When you say a form, Iris, I assume you're referring to the PEAD form. Yeah, the PEAD form, I would have sellers sign one form, listing agent sign a different form, buyer's agent. I mean, it's possible, of course, that let's say the buyer and the buyer's agent, they both want to sign the same form. Ideally, buyers sign one form, agent signs another form, because everyone has different situations, right? Everyone might have a different health situation. But if everyone has the exact same health situation, I guess theoretically, buyers and buyer's agent could sign the same form, okay? I mean, it's possible. Gina, that's how you're seeing offers come in. That's why sellers don't wish to sign. Yeah, I don't blame them. If there's no boxes checked, I think it's pointless to sign it anyway, because you're not agreeing to anything anyway. Maybe I'd send it back and say, well, maybe you want to check the boxes or whatever. Okay. Brendan Rome, who enforces these statements? That's a good question. In other words, how do you know that someone who's making these statements is telling the truth? Or how do you know people don't even know if they're sick or not, right? Or they don't know. Well, the point is, it says right on the form, it's not the agent's job to verify anything. Everyone's assuming a risk here. You're all hoping that people are telling the truth and they know if they're sick or not or whatever. And you're hoping the seller's going to disclose to you if, the buyer is, if a previous buyer was sick or something. I mean, you're hoping everyone's going to do the right thing. And if you can prove later in a court of law that someone didn't tell the truth, that's an issue. But there's no real way to enforce it as you go, right? You don't know. And it's everyone understands in these forms that it's not the realtor's job to figure out that everyone's doing the right thing, telling the truth, etc. Robert, good question. What if a buyer shows up with the form and they actually say right on the form, yep, I'm sick, or someone in my family is sick and I have contact with them? Can the seller refuse entry? Absolutely yes. You do not have to allow, isn't that discrimination? Isn't that discrimination based on someone's medical condition? Yes. You're allowed to discriminate against someone whose the medical condition is a contagious disease, right? You see what I'm saying? So that's a very good question. That's not considered illegal discrimination. Um, let's see. Priscilla Bowler about CVA 4B. Yeah, I mean, you're going to decide up front what the buyer and seller think about as far as should the buyer get their money back or not. Like I said, sometimes they're not going to agree on this. The buyer's going to say, I only want this form if I get my money back. The seller says, I only want the form if I get your money, in which case, if you don't sign it, you don't sign it. It's not part of the contract. If there's a problem later, the court's going to decide who gets the money. George, back a question in the, can you cancel a deal because they're unable to schedule a walkthrough? Okay, well, in other words, I guess what you're asking is the seller saying, I don't want you to come in for a walkthrough. I refuse to allow a walkthrough. Remember, under California law in LA County or Riverside County or San Bernardino County, it's okay to come into the property if you follow the procedures. So if you're asking, what if the seller says, I don't care what the rules are, I am not comfortable allowing the walkthrough? Yeah, the buyer could cancel that because the seller's in breach of contract, right? I mean, there's nothing in the law that says seller has the right to refuse a walkthrough. Okay, let me go on. I come back to some questions later if you want. Next thing I want to talk about a little more quickly is rentals. We're in a complicated situation in California right now. You got to listen carefully. Number one, we have an eviction moratorium, meaning up until June 1st, you cannot evict someone if the reason you want to evict them is because they didn't pay the rent, and the reason they didn't pay the rent is because they have a COVID-19 related loss of income. It doesn't mean they don't got to pay you back. It just means you can't evict them for the next 2 months or for the next month or so, if that's their reason. So the last two forms I want to talk about, there's one form called the NTAP, Notice to Tenant About Ability to Pay Rent. And if I'm the landlord, I give this to my tenant, and this is the form that says, hey, tenant, I noticed you didn't pay your rent. Well, yeah, there's an eviction moratorium, but you still have to prove to me why you didn't pay your rent. You have to prove to me that the reason you didn't pay your rent is because of COVID-19. So this is the form. Thanks, Annette. Do you have to give this to every tenant? No. I would probably only give this to the tenant who didn't pay my rent. I mean, if they pay the rent, what's the problem? But let's say I didn't get my rent, my April 1st rent. I give them this form, or May 1st, which basically tells them, yeah, there are these safe at home, there's these shelter in place, there's these rules protecting tenants, but you still have to notify me why you didn't pay the rent, and you have to prove to me what the reason was, which leads to the last form, which is the RPD, the rent payment delay. And this is the form where the tenant tells me, the landlord, number one, yep, I'm unable to pay my rent. Number two, this is the reason, unable to work because I was sick, loss of hours, I had to take care of a kid. Number three, either I'm going to attach to you or deliver to you later the proof of the reason, why I didn't pay you the rent, termination notice, pay stub, medical bill, whatever. Number four, I'm telling you how much rent I'm not going to pay you. And number five, maybe we'll set up a repayment plan. So see April and May, because for now it's only those 2 months that you don't have to pay the rent. So what if someone gets laid off April, May, and June, they're still laid off? Does that mean you can't evict them because they didn't pay the June rent also? No, you can still evict them now because this only lasts till June 1st. They might extend that, but right now it's June 1st. So If they don't pay the rent for the third month, I can evict them, even though the reason they didn't pay is that they lost their job because of COVID-19. But there's another issue. California courts are currently closed for the purposes of doing unlawful detainers. Okay? Now, you know what that means? That means even after June 1st, if the tenant owes you money, maybe it's not a question of COVID-19, they just don't pay their rent for some reason, or even after June 1st, when the eviction moratorium is over, you still, even though you have the right to evict them, you're not going to be able to evict them until the courts reopen for unlawful detainers, and that's not going to happen until August 1st. So even if you serve them with a notice, you're not going to get a trial date until August 1st. Okay? Now, this applies to commercial also. What about this situation? I'm selling a house, there's a tenant on there, we want the tenant out, buyer wants the tenant out, so I give the tenant a 60-day notice. Do they have to leave? Absolutely. 60 days go by, they have to leave. What if they don't leave? Well, if it's before August 1st, you're not going to be able to kick them out. You are going to be able to sue them, though, for damages. You can say, if you don't leave, you're going to cost the sale. That's going to cost the seller money, cost the buyer money, cost everybody. But we're going to sue you for damages right now. But you can't physically remove them until the courts are open for unlawful detainers. And then to even complicate your life even more, some cities, LA City, for example, says if a tenant can't pay rent because of COVID-19, and that's the reason they're not paying rent, they don't have to pay you back, once they get their job back or whatever, once they're no longer sick, the rent that they didn't pay temporarily, they don't have to pay you back for 12 months. Other parts of LA County, it's 6 months. So I don't think Riverside County or San Bernardino County has anything like that. But, see what I'm saying? Depending on where your rental property is, there may be not just the court closing till August 1st, there may be a delay when they have to pay you back the back rent. LA City, they got 12 months to pay you back the back rent, okay? Obviously, you can do cash for keys, yes. Cash for keys is the time-honored way to get a tenant out of the property. If they're willing to work with you, they'll work with you, right? And then some cities like LA, for example, even has a rent freeze. So in LA City right now, you can't raise someone's rent whether you're under rent control or not. The reason I'm telling you this is it's up to you to figure out, or you can call the legal hotline. If there's any cities near where you are, in the desert, anywhere out there, they may have passed their own specific rules on rentals to supplement the state rule I've been telling you about. If you want to call the legal hotline, we can help you with that. So we even have a spreadsheet on our website that shows you all the cities that have their own ordinances. Okay, so we got resources if you want them, or just call and ask. A couple more things real quickly. Not only is there an eviction moratorium in California, there's a foreclosure moratorium in California. That means if you're behind on if you don't make your mortgage payments this month or last month or next month, nobody can foreclose on you until June 23rd. So this went into effect March 23rd, 3 months, June 23rd, no foreclosures. What about after June 23rd? Well, if you have a direct loan with a bank or, Wells Fargo or Citibank or your local bank or saving or credit union, whatever, if you have a direct loan with a lender, there's a foreclosure moratorium, but that doesn't mean you don't have to make the payments, because when the foreclosure moratorium is over on June 23rd, they can demand that you pay all the mortgage payments you missed. So make the payments. Don't not make the payments. They're not forgiven. They're not delayed. It's just the foreclosure is delayed. However, for certain federally related loans, there's a forbearance, not just a moratorium. For example, let's say the loan securing your property is an FHA loan or a VA loan, or just simply a conforming loan that was sold to Fannie or Freddie and is being serviced by Fannie or Freddie, by a servicer, conforming loans. Well, in that case, not only are there no foreclosures till June 23rd, but you know what else? Those 3 months of payments that you didn't make, you don't owe them on June 23rd. You got 12 months to pay back the payments you missed. Whereas if it's a direct loan, you can try to work something out with the lender, but they don't have to give you any forbearance at all. So see, it gets a little complicated depending on what type of loan you have. Another thing that's delayed right now are DRE stuff, Department of Real Estate, which is good. If you have any deadline coming up prior to July 14th to renew your license or to renew your continuing education or anything like that, you have a 60-day extension. So if your license renewal date is July 1st, it's now August 29th. You add 60 days to it. But if your deadline is after July 14th, you have no extension at all, okay? 1031 exchanges are also extended right now. Remember 1031 exchange, you can exchange one income or commercial property for another. You can do a delayed exchange. You can sell the first one, then you have 180 days to close, 45 days to identify the replacement property, 180 days to close on it. If you're in the middle of one of those and you have a deadline coming up, you can extend that deadline to July 15th, okay? Another delay, speaking of delays, the last delay I want to mention, there's something, your purchase contract, the 10-page residential purchase contract, the RPA, you may have heard, it was scheduled to have a major revision this year. That's been postponed a whole year, so there's going to be no changes to the purchase contract. No change to the purchase contract until December 2021, okay? Before I talk about realtor relief, let me go back to the chat real quick. Once again, on the CVA, remember, ideally, you sign it at the time of the offer, because if you wait till signing it when something triggers the delay, remember, the other side can say, well, no, I'm not going to sign that form. I don't want to do the extension. Whereas if you signed it at the time of the offer, it'd be great if they did agree to it, but the advantage of signing it at the time of the offer is then they've committed to that up front. So when the delay happens, they've already agreed, okay? Let's see. Returning to the PAD form, there's no date of entry. The point is, if I'm the seller, the listing agent, and you're entering the property, I'm going to insist that the date on the form, the date when you signed it, is today. So it's not, the important thing isn't the date. Yeah, I mean, you're right. You don't have to put down the date of entry. I'm just not going to let you in if the date you signed it is not today. So in other words, the date of entry is always that day, because that's the only day that the form is really good for, right? When I say 2 people are allowed per showing, no, I don't count the listing agent. So on the buyer's side, it's 2 people, buyer's agent plus 2. What about home inspector? Well, that's just 1. Can I have 2 different inspectors on the property at the same time? No, unless they work together. So it's supposed to be limited to 1, with the exception, if you're showing it to a buyer, you can have 2, because it's understood that typically it's like a husband and wife situation, right? But the 2 people you're showing it to have to be from the same household. You see what I'm saying? I mean, you can't show 2 unrelated people the property at the same time. You can, otherwise there's only got to be 1. If it's 2, they got to be from either related from the same household as buyers, okay? All right, the last thing I want to talk about real quick is as realtors, you are eligible for some realtor relief. You're eligible for some money. You're eligible, actually, believe it or not, for unemployment compensation. Traditionally, realtors are independent contractors. You are, which means you're not eligible for unemployment. But you are eligible for this special unemployment, which is called Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, PUA. The program just opened yesterday. And of course, it crashed because everybody applied at the same time. You don't have to apply today. You all got an email. Every realtor in California got an email yesterday showing you how to apply for this. Plus, we have a phone number. We have a hotline that's being staffed as we speak right now with 20 people, I think. Plus, there are 8 people also responding to emails. The phone number is 213-351-8450, 213-351-8450. I'll put it in the chat, and I'll answer more questions too. Annette already put it there. Way to go. Remember, there's a 0 at the end. Annette, 8450. Anyway, here's the deal. If you have questions, look at the application you all got. If you didn't get it, call that number. If you have any questions on how to fill out the application, call that number. We got people to help. Yeah, if you start filling out the application, we hear sometimes people are getting thrown off the system. It crashes periodically. Be patient, keep trying. If you call that hotline, the current wait time, I think, is about 10 minutes, so you'll get through. And we got experts there to help you step by step. And they can answer your questions, okay? They actually think it's better if you, thanks for putting the email too, Annette. You actually get better service, they say, if you call. You'll get a quicker response. So anyway, but you can send an email anyway, and you will get a response, but probably not today or something. Anyway, and it's retroactive though. So, oh, I got to get my application in, or are they going to run out of money? They're not going to run out of money, and you'll get paid retroactive back to February 2nd. But I know you want to get it in there, so keep trying. Hopefully it'll calm down today or tomorrow, and you'll be able to do your application. What if you have a side job? You have a W-2 job on the side. Are you still going to be eligible for this money? And the answer is, it depends on how much money you make on the side job, and how much unemployment you're getting for the side job, the W-2 job. But bottom line is, a lot of realtors, I would say most realtors, are going to be eligible for starting off with any, and this is, this means you're not making your normal income because of the pandemic. If you're making your normal income, obviously you don't get unemployment, but you're going to get $167 per week for February and March, and then for April, May, June, and July, you're going to get $600 plus $167 per week in August, September, if you're still not working, less money. And you may even get more than that money. You may even get more than that, depending on your own income situation. And you're already asking me questions on this, and don't ask me questions on this. Call that number, talk to the experts. Lisa Brenner asked me about Social Security. Gracie, I'm now going to talk to you about the other 2 programs. To me, that might be the best program for a lot of you, but there's a couple other programs you're eligible for as realtors. One's called the PPP, Payroll Protection Program, and there's one called the EIDL, which is Economic Injury Disaster Loans. Gracie's telling me that Chase said they're not taking applications. I got a funny feeling they may have run out of money again. To me, and that's, by the way, that's a program. The PPP is the reason people like that one is you can apply for a forgivable loan. You can apply for a loan that you don't have to pay back for certain expenses, including lost income as a realtor. But you can it's a limit on how much money you can get, and you have to use the money by July 1st, and you can only use it for certain things. Then there's EIDL. Maybe you own a business, you're a broker, and you have ongoing you need working capital, you have debts you got to pay, you got other expenses. Well, you're eligible for a grant of up to $10,000 and a loan, not forgivable, but a loan that could be for more money, 30-year fixed, 3.75% interest. Call that number I gave you to see what the status of those two programs are. And also they might be able to help you with which program is the best for you. Think about that. Okay, let me go back to a couple questions. Question is, who's supposed to sign the PEAD? The broker does not need to sign. Agent can sign for the broker. The original version of the form, it said broker. So of course, a lot of people said, well, does that mean the broker personally has to sign it, or can the agent sign it? Now it says broker/agent. So it's perfectly okay for the agent to sign, okay? What if you have a lease that expires May 1st, tenant paid partial rent for April? I'm not really sure, Diane, what your question is. If you want to maybe expand on that a little bit, what your question is about tenant paid partial rent for April. I mean, obviously they owe the money. You can't evict them if the reason they paid partial payment, though, is only because of COVID-19. And you can take the money out of the security deposit. Well, can I sue them? What if they leave and they cause damage that's more than the security deposit that's left after I use the security deposit for the rent they didn't pay? Well, to the extent that the reason they didn't pay was because of COVID-19, you can't evict them for that money, but can I still sue them for that money? Well, not until June, but then you could. Kind of complicated. I hope you got that one. Tracy's asking, do all service providers, such as repair people, inspectors, all sign? Yes, everyone who enters the property should sign a PEAD every time they enter for now, okay? The foreclosure moratorium, Wendy's asking, is it only for this sale, or can you already begin and file the NOD? In other words, do I have to wait to file the notice of default till then, or is it just I can't get a sale date? If it's a federally related loan, FHA, VA, or conforming loan, remember, they don't really have to pay yet. So obviously at this point, if the reason they didn't pay is COVID-19, you can't do anything. And by the time, so the eviction, the foreclosure moratorium is when the foreclosure forbearance ends. So bottom line on those types of loans, no. But if it's a direct loan to a lender, the foreclosure moratorium doesn't mean they can't file an NOD before then. So remember, you have to check and figure out what type of loan it is to answer some of these questions, okay? All right. Diane, now you're clarifying your question. The seller wants to sell. The lease expires May 1st. I guess you're telling me you're worried about the tenant leaving. Is that the question? Because that's a problem, right? Tenant, whether they pay the rent or not, what if they won't leave? And the problem is, like you said, you can't evict them. Your only leverage against the tenant is you say, listen, if you don't leave, you're interfering, you're going to cost me money. You're going to cost sellers and buyers money, and you are responsible for that money. It's not just, that's not got nothing to do with like your security deposit or anything like that. That's damages you're causing us. So you can threaten them, right? Or you do the old cash for keys, right? The PUA phone number, Sharon, I think that the number I was referring to is the number above that, the relief hotline. I don't have the direct phone number for the PUA itself, but I think that was on the email that everybody got yesterday from C.A.R. that has the process, the application that you have to fill out, okay? I'm not even sure, but I don't know any PUA direct phone number. There probably is one, and I'm sure they can tell you on that relief hotline there that's up there, okay? All right. We got a few more minutes if anybody has any more questions. Tell you what I'll do, I'm always crazy to do this, but I'll put my own email address if you want to ask me questions later that occurs to you. I usually catch up, I've been pretty good on catching up to all my emails within about a day nowadays. So if any questions, remember, don't ask me questions on the PUA or the PPP or any of that stuff. Yeah, Lori, darling, good question. Ask these people, ask those questions are the exact types of questions that you're going to call that other number to ask, okay? Or look on the website or whatever. Apparently there are some issues about, it's hard, you don't know how to fill out certain parts of the application. Hang in there, be patient, it's retroactive, they're not going to run out of money. If you're eligible, you're going to get your money. I know you want it sooner rather than later, but hang in there. Plus, I think a better news is the market's going to open up. I don't know exactly when, but it's starting the process. And I personally think real estate's going to come back pretty strong. We'll all have to see what's going on. Yep, you're all asking good questions now that I cannot answer. Now, Lori, if you're saying nobody is live at that number I just gave you, they might have maxed out, in which case you gotta, when they get like 50 calls holding at once, they sort of stop and you gotta wait a few minutes to call back. But this happened yesterday, the first day we got like 2,000 calls. And eventually everyone got through on our phone number, anyone who was willing to wait. And the average wait time was I think 12 minutes. So if you call right now and they're not taking calls, it's because they have the maximum number in queue right now, but that won't last. And they're open till 8 o'clock tonight. So the later in the day you call, you probably have a better chance of getting in. It's only gonna be this way, I think, for a few days, but hang in there. Yes, Sherry, for the, I'm pretty sure you're going to get a lump sum for the first payment. Yes. But quit asking me these questions on this stuff because I don't know. We got experts. We got people. Any more legal type questions? Oh yeah, Robin has a question. Yes, not only the forbearance, they're not allowed to report these payments, missed payments to the credit reporting agencies as well. Don Summers said he's already got funds from the PPP. That's good. And he's telling all of us it doesn't count Social Security. Thanks, Don, for the information. You guys can help each other. That's good. Okay, Rich or Robin or Annette. Any questions you're aware of? You
No,
have my email.
I did.
You guys have my email.
I did hear that the forbearance would cause some credit issues.
It's not supposed to. They're not supposed to report that.
Okay, that's
So,
good news.
Yep. Yeah, you guys got to tell us if things don't happen the way I said. You got to tell us so because we have to sometimes push back and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do, whether it's a lender, whether it's a government agency. I mean, this is all crazy stuff that's going on, as you know. No one's ever dealt with any of this before. Can commercial tenants be evicted? Not right now, not till August 1st. Eileen, are there any more plans for new forms? No, no more forms. No more COVID forms. And I don't think there are going to be any more changes. I think you got the forms. Jason's happy about that. Yes, that's it. Okay. No more forms for now. And these forms, you're not going to be using them forever. But for now, they're good forms. The first two are the ones that I really, really strongly want you to use, the RLA, CAA, and the PEAD. The rest, they're good. You don't have to use them.
Gov, did you mention anything about the RPA?
I forget if I mentioned it, but if I didn't mention it, it's not going to be updated until the end of December. So one thing you're not going to have to worry about, realtors, is a new purchase contract. Cindy's asking, do I need to have the RLACA complete on listings we had prior to COVID? If they will sign it. I mean, I think it's in everyone's interest. I mean, obviously you can't force a seller to sign an amendment after you're already in contract, but it really protects the seller too, because by signing that form, the seller has shown a good faith commitment to follow the rules. And you know, it's good to have that officially on writing as well. Of course, some sellers maybe aren't going to want to sign it because of the part where they have to indemnify you if there's a problem. But yeah, you try to get them to sign it even if you already had the listing signed before COVID. But obviously you can't force them to. But you can say on a new listing, I'm not going to give you this listing. I'm not going to take the listing unless you sign it. What if you have a new seller today who says, yes, I want to list with you, but I don't want to sign that form? Well, I'm going to question whether you want to work with that person if they're not willing to commit to following the rules. Now that's up to you. Like I said, you try to get them on the previous listings, but if they don't, they don't. Okay, I got like 2 minutes, people. You have my email. You have any questions, please send them along. I think I updated you on pretty much all you need to know right now, COVID-19 related. That's all the forms information you need to know for now. So you're welcome, those of you that say thank you. Thanks for having me. I can't wait to see you in person one day.
Same here.
As soon as we can do that, we'll be doing that.
Yes.
As soon as we all
Thank
get
you
out of,
again.
as soon as we all get out of prison.
I wish you had a yard.
Yeah, I wish I had a yard. They got the association swimming pool, but of course they closed it. You know, you're not allowed to go. So
Right.
I'm really trapped.
There's a lot of thank yous to you, Gov. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. See you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.